Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thanks so much for joining. I'm Nicole Cacal. I am the CEO of Forbes Ignite. Wanted to give a brief intro of what Forbes Ignite is if this is the first time you've ever joined one of our live streams. So this is the first time we're actually doing this for First Fridays with Forbes Ignite. So again, thanks for joining. Forbes Ignite is the innovation coalition for Forbes Media. So we work on a lot of initiatives that are really focused on solving the most pressing systemic challenges at the center of business, NGOs, other nonprofits, and within the startup ecosystem as well. So we sit right at that intersection with social impact at its core. And we have a special treat for you all today. So we are specifically focused on how we might inspire and drive change and action through music. And all three of our guests here are all connected by the notion of having music in the background within their professional careers, and they have so much to share today. So the first person I wanted to introduce, we have Christopher McBride, the amazing jazz musician who plays the alto sax, also a music educator, composer, you name it, he does it all. So welcome, Chris. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
We also have DJ Poison Ivy, who is more accurately known as a sports sound strategist for or with the Dallas Mavericks. So thank you so much for joining, Ivy. I know it's pretty early in the morning, so we really appreciate it.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
And finally, we have Samuel Oladipupo, who is a product manager with Walmart, but he is also known as DJ Olu, who is a world famous Kizomba DJ. And you can find his music online as well. And we can post everyone's Instagram handles at the very end of this live stream. So feel free to follow everyone after this conversation. So just to set up what we were speaking about earlier this week, actually yesterday. So we got started on basically what inspired all of us to start on our music journeys. Some of it was not so clear cut. Some of it was always very focused from the very beginning by following our passions. And so some of the things that need to be in place, like you said, Ivy, some specific systems have to be in place in order for us to pursue and explore our passion, to be able to plan through it or stumble upon it, however each of our journeys actually led us there. And everyone's journey looks different, but at the end of the day, it all has a very specific impact on society. And we are discussing how music has to be protected through a lot of the work that we're doing. And music itself is something that we not just have to protect because it's something that brings people together collectively, but it also, again, inspires and drives change. So I'm going to be a fly in the wall. I'll be in the background, but I would love for you all to really summarize where we were with the conversation yesterday and what you've been thinking since then. So I'll toss it over to you, Ivy.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this very, very, very necessary, integral conversation. And much like Nicole said, and before I begin, might I add that I hope that everyone has been making their best attempt at maintaining good health and helping in curbing the spread of COVID-19. It is indeed a very time. My 30 years of life, I don't recall having gone through anything ever like this, of this magnitude. And of course, as we maneuver through this pandemic, it's interesting to not only take note of its impact on a sector that, means a lot to myself and Chris and DJ Olu, which is the art sector. And as a musician, as a lover of the art, it's hard to watch and note the financial impact specifically of this pandemic on our sector. And I think that more than anything, we have to understand that there's a lot at stake. So yes, there is a financial component. There's also a cultural and historical preservation component, um, and there's also a therapeutic, global morale component. These are all things that music and the arts heavily contribute to. So I hope that through this conversation, we can navigate and highlight the importance of those and how to move forward, best practices moving forward, so that we can arm and empower, and educate not only our fellow compadres, but the public in general on the importance of recognizing the arts sector not necessarily as a hobby, but a functional business. So I know that this is super important to me because music truly is my life. There is nothing that I don't do that's not set to song. Uh, I'm sure, Chris and Dita Ola can say the same. So it's so hard to separate and think about what my life would be like um, without music. I've been a classically trained musician. I've been Chris, do you say instrumentalist? Is that a word?
Yeah, instrumentalist. Yep.
Okay. Okay, great. I felt like you would know better than I. So yes, I've been there, and turntables were just yet another instrument for me to learn. Um, and I've just again been able to incorporate it into every aspect of my life so much so that now I have a career out of strategizing sound for sports for probably the greatest pro sports team there is in the world. That's my journey. We can dig a little bit deeper into it, but I hope that I can kind of set up what we're going to talk about for you all today, and I'll allow or pass it over to my great friends to kind of chime in and build this conversation.
Yeah. I guess I'll say, I'll speak up next. Just even the title of this seminar, inspiring. Music has been such an integral part of my life since I was very young. Since yeah, I started singing before I could talk. I was saying "Jam Tonight" by Freddie Jackson, and before I said like actual words. So I think one of the things that I feel like this pandemic has taught us. Before the quarantine, I was performing full time. I mean, 5 or 6 nights out of the week, I was performing either early in the day for school, like different schools through Jazz at Lincoln Center. I would play different schools in the morning, different public schools. We would just play shows for the students called Jazz for Young People. So either through that program I was doing something, or another program I work with called Jazz Reach, where I would go around the country and do stuff for schools, or I was playing with my own group, the whole proof. Just a group that performs real I guess around the world now. I did my first international tour last year in the Ukraine. So, but my performance group, the whole proof, and then I would say anywhere from 8 to 12 different ensembles. But that was my full time job, and now because of the quarantine, that has been ultimately suspended for the foreseeable future. Um, even though I know that there's some places, parts of the country where musicians are working again. New York is currently in phase 2, so it's not a lot going on. I think barbershops, tattoo parlors are just opening up. That whatever phase that is where New York is, and so um, when I think about what I think needs to change in the music world, is I feel like I mean, even I was talking with a friend yesterday after our conversation, and he recently got into an accident in Central Park, and he hurt his clavicle and he hurt his wrist. He got his bill yesterday. His bill was $22,000, and then his what he was required to pay was $2,700, which which is even more than 10% of the actual bill. And so my thing, I think what musicians need to really try to advocate for, especially musicians who aren't necessarily if they're doing if they're self-employed or independent, but I would say for us getting quality healthcare coverage where like if we get into an accident, we're not having to foot a $2,700 bill. I think that's like really really important, and that's definitely going to take capital from a couple big companies, but I really feel like that is something that we really need to look at, because like I said, if something happens, if somebody contracts COVID and you don't have insurance, it's like, what then, so that was one thing that I noticed. Just like if essentially if musicians get hurt or something like that during this time, it's going to be a big problem. So that I feel like that's one thing that really needs to be looked at. I don't know exactly how to get the ball rolling on that, but I know it's something that should definitely be viewed, So that's my thoughts on, inspiring change, at least in one aspect.
Change in action.
Thanks for sharing, Mike Breezel. I remembered.
You did.
I remembered. And first of all, I just want to give a shout out to all the musicians and entertainers out there. Y'all killing it, and y'all remaining strong during the COVID and during the quarantine. These are times like we've never seen before. And like you said, I don't think any of us has experienced anything like this since we've been born or since we've been exposed to adult entertainment. Entertainment in our adult working life. So it is definitely very different. And one thing that I also want to call out is how do we embrace the change, right? How do we think about what to do next? What do we do if I can't go out and play? If I can't go out and tour the world like I used to do? How can we reinvent ourselves? What can we do differently? So I think we have to sit down and just take a look at entertainment. What is the shift, right? What are people thinking of right now? The consumers that consume our work, our product, our gigs, where are they? They're online right now. So how do we bridge that gap as entertainers? So we have to continuously re-evolve and change the way we entertain. And I'm going to say this. I know we all just dying and waiting to get out and play like we normally do. I'm waiting. I can't wait to get out and play. I cringe it every day. But I'm going to tell you this. The entertainment business is never going to be the same again. It's being changed. Our whole life is being changed with this pandemic. The way the kids think are being changed. You see the educational system being changed. When I went to school, we had to go in and be there in person. Now the kids are getting the option to be at home, and it is still school. It's the same thing. Now people want to go and shop online and get that delivered. Our lives is going to be changed forever and ever. And so we as entertainers need to think and reevaluate things and look at how do we fit into the new way that we can entertain, but not only entertain, but also uh, get paid doing so, and also fit into the culture, and also be able to meet our consumers where they are. So I think that's one thing that I'll call out that we definitely need to look into as entertainers. And people are changing. You know, people are different. People will be different after the pandemic than what they used to be before the pandemic. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Yeah. Well, I think a question that could probably kind of, help things, and I'll start with you again, Poison Ivy. But what have you been doing during the quarantine? You know, that when you say like things are changing, what are some things that you've maybe been doing during the quarantine to adjust to that change?
Um, yeah, great question. I, initially, obviously, the digital space became um, the only outlet, not only to generate revenue, but also I think a lot of it too was convince ourselves that we didn't have to immediately and automatically be out of a place to display our skills. A lot of it I've
Yeah.
heard, like a lot of it described as, we really have to give these their flowers because the first 2 months of this thing, is like literally people were having virtual celebrations and parties and gatherings and were able to lose themselves in music and in dance and celebrations through several different notable and maybe not so notable life streams. So a lot of it was exploring that digital space, and that also definitely sheds light on the learning curve that I had to quickly adapt to because much like what we said, like there's the technological aspect of this, right? How many of us as creatives were set up to be able to do so um, efficiently, but also in a visually pleasing and put together a visually pleasing aesthetic. And a lot of our work most of the time out of the house and into venues and into concert arenas and stages and clubs and what have you. However, what does our home front look like? And was there ever really a need to invest in whether it be quality equipment at the house, or I find myself having to learn things like OBS, and split. And you're looking at somebody else's live stream and you're like, whoa, why do they look like they really are, where they are and that. And a lot of that was interesting because it was a time investment, it was a financial investment. But it all had to happen like right now, so
Yeah.
it definitely came hard and it came fast. So I did that, but I also, I took a little time to get organized, as a musician. Obviously, I didn't realize it really. I'm still getting a grasp on how our lives are cyclical and nonstop. It's almost like the wake sleep, or the wake work sleep cycle is so so heavy, that I never really often too much had time, and I'm not ashamed to admit, like organizing a DJ library, sorting music, downloading music, updating music.
Tell me about it.
Sort of struggle, you know what I mean? I spend a lot of time doing that, but I also spend a lot of time just reflecting on how it is that we're going through a lot right now. Whether it be civil unrest, whether it be and globally, not just in America, globally, a lot of growth, a lot of discovery, and I've always been very aware of how it is that I'm fitting into the current narrative, and really understanding both from, and I think for me, both from a sports and perspective, what I'm lending to the conversation, how I'm affecting the conversation, how I'm, using my platform to affect not only, change but action. So even with my live streams and playing and posting and socials and that was, my web presence. It's how am I going to use what I do to represent who I am and what I believe, and putting together some content to match the mood, so to speak. And yeah, but then also things like you said, Chris, looking at really just, I think a lot of this is the financial aspect. Is, you know, how was I set up to be able to receive EIDL loans, to be able to receive PPP funding, like to be able to have business insurance. I'm super fortunate to have an employer that's top notch in terms of just employee welfare and safety and whatnot. But also, I've been looking at some of the best companies in the world in terms of corporate responsibility and just responsibility about the employees, scaling it down. I'm really all about scale, and that what they can do as a billion-dollar organization, I should be able to if not at least and then replicate for my small enterprise as well. So a little bit of therapy, a little bit of cleaning on all fronts, and a little bit of activism as well. It's kind of been my time here in my space over the course.
Yeah. All right. I'll some of the stuff that I've been doing during the quarantine, first of all, I would say the first week and a half, I did nothing. I just kind of processed everything that was happening. I was like, all right. So I had all this work lined up, through, at that point, probably through August or something like that. I had dates, and then it was all gone. And so I was like, okay. And I just kind of sat around for a weekend, and I thought about, the fact, like Olu said, you get that itch. I was working a majority of the week, playing, same thing around the world, traveling. So what though, I thought about what had always taken me back to a place where I can kind of focus and concentrate, and that's music, And there, when I'm on the road, I'm always listening to different artists and their music. And so I was like, well, it's a bunch of artists who I still haven't checked out yet. I could sit them down, interview them, talk about the CD, talk about what's going on in the world. And so during the quarantine, I started like a live, like an Instagram live series, and I just interviewed, different artists and things of that nature. And and it's been inspiring for a lot of musicians who normally wouldn't get that access to those musicians. Because people are on the road traveling and such, but because of the quarantine, people have been at home. So I've been able to get access to some incredible musicians, Nicholas Payton and Keon Harold, Marquise Hill, just not just trumpet players. I'm trying to Casey Benjamin, the great Ron Carter, the bassist, and different historians and things of that matter. And just to get them talking about, their art or talking about their music and talking about how they feel about what's going on and different ways that musicians can, record, start, try to start a nonprofit, try to start an LLC, like important things that we really don't get time to discuss. Like, when you're in the music business, you kind of just get thrown into it, It's like one day, you know, you might be chilling out, go to a show, get a gig, and then all of a sudden you just working and you're a musician, you know. And it's nobody ever, you know, says you're a professional musician now, right? You know, or you're a professional DJ. Like it just kind of happens. And so with that being said, like you said, Ivy, to talk on your point a little bit about where it doesn't feel like a hobby, you know, it's like, you know, I know for the first couple years, I'm sure everybody in the thread is like, well, what else do you do? It's like, no, this is it. this is all I'm doing. It's like, wow. And you can pay your bills with that? That's the next question, right? It's like, what else are you doing? You can pay your bills with that? It's like, yeah.
Wish I had
doing all right.
else, you know?
You know, so, but I've been able to bring, you know, essentially highlight different things that musicians can do and think about when they're trying to do their own thing. And I think that's really been very, very beneficial. I know to the community of musicians that I deal with, but I want to, you know, it hasn't been just jazz. You know, I had the great drummer Daru Jones on there, who's, you know, super killing drummers, you know, does stuff with Pete Rock and a bunch of other cats, you know. But I'm trying to expand to different things and different, you know, genres of music. Like you said, Olu, like I would love to get you on and have like an Afro Latin set on there, and I just host it. You know what I mean? But like I definitely want to show musicians all the different avenues of making money. You know, we haven't even talked about, you know, commercial stuff that you could do, virtual teaching, and, you know, so there's a lot of things that can be done, but it, you know, you do have to be in the right mental space, like you said, Ivy, just to even try to navigate that water at first, you know. So it really is important to make sure your mental energy is good, to have the space to process whatever the next step is, you know.
I would like to also add to that, and as we process everything and we try to rethink what we do, and I think it's very, very important that we stay in touch with our fans, our customer base, the consumers of our product, so they understand that, hey, I'm not just sitting at home. I'm thinking about you. You know, I can't be with you in person right now, but hey, here's the new remix. What do you think about that? Here's the new mix. Here's a new recording, or like you said, Chris, that you're always on Instagram Live, bringing new artists and successful jazz and other genres of music to talk. And definitely bring me on. I'll take you up on that. But
we'll talk. We'll talk. You know, we'll talk afterwards. Yeah,
definitely.
keep going.
Yeah. So I think being in touch with your fans and your consumer base is very, very important as well. We got to make sure that we're using all the outlet, Instagram, Facebook, whatever you've got, Twitch, YouTube. To make sure that you're reaching out and you're getting the product out there regardless. You know, you may not be getting exactly what you get, you know, in a live session, but there are other ways, you know, you can start uploading to Spotify and uploading to Apple Music and Tidal and all the other streaming platforms, just to make sure that you keep the content flowing and you keep in communication with your fans.
I think another thing to keep to note as well, I think one thing that has been really evident and very important to me is the necessity of our interaction as a creative community. The power of all of our brains and all of our thinking and all of our resources together far surpasses what we could do as individuals. I know that actually more than any time, in the recent past during this downtime that I've had, is when I've had to rely on the expertise and the minds of my fellow creative community. When it comes to terms like navigating certain things, right? So sharing information. You know, a lot of us, man, it was crazy for a little while there. We're like, okay, so how do I not get kicked off IG Live? How do I not get this? Or what can I not play? And even the power of lobbying. You know, I've always been such an advocate of, even, you know, they have the Screen Actors Guild and whatever else when it comes to Hollywood and acting. And I think it took for them to realize that we're stronger together. You know, if my problem will eventually become your problem, which will eventually become that person's problem. So how about we unionize, much like any association, right? Athletes have it. Um, I think that we, you know, again, over the last couple of years with the advances in technology and with the availability of equipment and software, a lot of people who might not see themselves as professional DJs have hopped in the space. And, you know, so the DJ, I wouldn't say has been, I wouldn't call it watered down, because I appreciate everybody's creative contribution and creative right to be able to dabble in the space. However, for those of us who actually do this for like a living, you know what I mean? As in, this is where we earn our bread and butter, our rent, our insurance, and everything else in between. Um, I've always been so curious in exploring the conversation of unionization in order to, and match to your point, Chris, earlier, to protect our rights as um, um, serious contributors to this. We really do. We work in the service industry. You know, what we offer is probably one of the a very very you know, it's an essential work, truly. And I know that term.
And we create an environment. You know,
Right.
It'd be like being out somewhere and you don't hear no background music. You don't hear there's no TV on the background. And no podcast. It's just silence. You know. Or the conversation of the people driving it, but there's no ambiance. You know, music. To your point, Ivy, music creates an ambiance. Now, I had a question with you two specifically, especially since you brought this up. That, like, have you guys had tried to do like a DJ set and essentially got like Instagram Live cut it or something, do the music copyright?
It's funny you ask, because although I don't know what your experience is, but for me, I've shifted to playing a lot of Afrobeats and Afro-diaspora music. So no, I did not have those issues. But when I did try to play anything that was registered or belonged to a major American, or not necessarily a major global label, but more so that, you know, that was already in the system and you recognize. So that kind of also led me to think, what does this mean for our African artists and what money they are not able to collect or not collecting and you know, whatever else. But so yeah, I mean, I've had those both issues, but it's raised different questions for me, more so because of what I've been able to discover about which artists are being flagged and which ones aren't, and how these social media platforms are working in conglomerate, like just trying to figure out what that ecosystem actually truly looks like.
Yeah.
I kind of use a few tricks to have not gotten flagged live. And I'll tell you some of the tricks that I use. One is I pitch up. So I already there is a setting in record box that I use that helps me pitch my music up. That will be one. The second thing is for my sets, I've got a bunch of collections of songs that I want to play during my set. I just go to Facebook Live and go live, but I set the privacy settings to myself so nobody knows I'm live, and I throw the songs out there. So I just go to sleep or something. You know, when all the songs are done playing, I get a list of the songs that's gonna be flagged. So I know, I know beforehand which song is gonna be flagged. So I try to remove those from my set before I go live. So that's the trick I've used.
That's so okay. So like you'll go on Facebook, use a privacy setting, go live, and then like if Facebook flags it, then you're like, okay, cool, I can't play this song.
Right.
You know. Wow.
I mean, I just remembered I actually had a nightmarish experience. Now that you bring it up, maybe I tried so hard to forget it that I forgot it for real. But I had to do a set for the Roots for Africa Day. on their YouTube channel, and okay, I can say this now, but it was a pre-recorded set that eventually was going to be streamed as though it was live. But you had to send in your set recording. Mind you, this is a 2-hour recording, and they have to process it through, and then YouTube kicks it back, and it kicked it back. And what really sucked was you couldn't know what. So let's say, okay, I had 100 songs. It would get the song 5 and stop. It'd be like, yep, this song won't clear. But it wouldn't scan all the way through. So you had to cut song 5, play it back again. It would get like song 11, stop. You know, you had to go back, get that part out. It would get the song 17. And I was like, okay, somebody has to create, maybe this Facebook is a cheat code, but again, it's you can get what, there's no standard yet on what some things that will clear on IG and Facebook will not clear on YouTube because of settings and label settings, and because YouTube monetizes, and then some songs can be monetized. And but we're like, the education behind this is so intense. And it's not
you just learning you just learning on the fly.
right, you know. But yeah, anyway, that's either his. But what that should tell us though is that, again, these labels and streaming services and DSPs are protecting the interests of corporations, you know, labels, and then these artists. And so we should act in similar accordance, you know, and even, you know, because what about our, you know, how am I supposed to be a DJ without mixing their songs? What, you know, so yes, some of the cheat codes include remixing, like Lowell said, pitching up, speeding up, you know.
Yeah, the pitch up idea is a vibe.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's what if I want to just offer an authentic, you know, sound at what these records really sound like? Should we start discussing, you know, licensing for DJs, or is this where innovation kicks in, right? Because necessity is the mother of all innovation. And so then do we create a platform that, you know, DJs can, and that was Twitch, that ended up becoming Twitch. And that's why, so there was a mass migration of the DJ sector to Twitch, because the allowances on that platform were a lot higher, because gamers, this platform that was created originally for gamers, come hand, like they walk hand in hand with music as well, because a lot of them in the background of their gaming play music. That licensing component probably has already been discussed and put into play that allows that. So then DJs are like, all right, cool, well, we'll just move to Twitch. But do we create a platform that's not a gaming platform? Because also it's not the easiest, it's not the hardest to learn, but we know it for gamers, right? Do we create something for us and musicians and live musicians and artists who want to play covers and mixes and whatever else without the hassle of an interrupted production, so to speak? So yeah.
What's that one platform? It wasn't as popular as a Twitter or Facebook, but they did live streams off of it. It was the first one to really do live streams. That's gonna bother me, but I can't. Go ahead, Olu. You know.
Cloud.
Say it again.
Mixcloud.
So yeah, Mixcloud, but it was live though. You could like do a live stream,
Periscope?
like Periscope. There it is.
Oh.
Yeah, Periscope.
Twitter, didn't Twitter absorb Periscope? Maybe, I don't know.
I was gonna say I'm not sure. You know, I don't got a fact checker around me to really check.
Yeah, it's really interesting because sometimes Facebook flags my own song, original song. Like, you know, I'm like, are you kidding me? And of course, I understand. There's no way for them to know that. You know, it's not. I'm not playing copyright music or copyrighted music. Yeah. But yeah, I throw in some effects. I throw in some like drum samples, you know, especially if I'm doing like an Afrobeat set, I throw in drum samples and stuff like that to get around being flagged.
There's something I wanted to comment on before I summarize a lot of the different topics that I've been hearing. So each of you have found a way out of necessity. Ivy, I'm going to quote you, where necessity is the model of all innovation. And you've had to think on the fly, and you had to learn as you go, essentially, to work around certain barriers. And I think regardless of what industry that you work in, that is the catalyst that actually makes us have to rethink or reinvent ourselves, like DJ Olu was saying at the beginning of this conversation. How are we going to reinvent ourselves, especially when we are living in a time where the barriers are even greater? And there were barriers that existed even before the pandemic. So I love the stream of thought that was actually, imminently coming out of this conversation. But to wrap this all up and to summarize, and I would love to get your thoughts on this, what I've been hearing is, when you pose that question at the very beginning of the conversation, just imagine a world without music at all. No music during games, no music during, just for your leisure, or any music to educate culture. Music has been a fundamental source of every single type of culture that's out there. And when you think about it now, we're living in a digital culture, whether or not we like it or not. And it's shifting. And we have to approach it in a very, very different way. And from a lot of what I was hearing was, during this time where gigs have been suspended, a lot of our normal operational day-to-day activity has pretty much had to be shifted. A lot of you have used this time, and a lot of others as well have used this time for reflection. And reflection actually leads to that shift. But the music and creativity in general is the catalyst for any type of reflection to even happen or to take place. It doesn't just happen in a vacuum. This is something that spreads and allows other people to share different ideas. Even if you don't speak the same language, if you don't, regardless of what geography you're in, this is something that transcends all of that. And so if necessity is the model for innovation, and we're talking about a lot of different barriers, even after you produce your music, even before you produce your music, as Chris was saying, in order to create, you have to have your basic needs met. There's a lot of different barriers that are happening all within this ecosystem. And so we have to protect the interests of artists. And as you were speaking, I was actually creating this, this diagram. I'm gonna share my screen very briefly, because I don't wanna bore you with all that. And I would love to get your thoughts on this, just to tie what we were talking about yesterday and what I've been hearing today. Bear with me one moment. All right, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So really, just really roughly here, when we start with the art and the culture, essentially it is a continuous feedback loop. Art feeds into the culture and vice versa. And that is something that's been a catalyst, and it feeds right back into all the sources of funding. I know we were talking about this earlier, the capital that's needed to actually get things done, to serve basic needs, so on and so forth. There's something I wanted to point out that was talked about yesterday. And Ivy, I know you mentioned that art and sports are something that these are things that we typically go to first before they become like a profession or before they're taken seriously. But these are things that we're naturally drawn to first. But the dichotomy of that is essentially what gets first to be defunded. It's the arts. But the arts is the catalyst to driving change and inspiration for a large number of people, for the masses. And so I wanted to point out that government here is it's becoming such a smaller and smaller and smaller piece that actually provides that funding. And you think about the other stakeholders in this ecosystem, the fans are the ones that are live within this culture. So I like created that with the same color here just to make it obvious. The fans and the culture are tied together, and a lot of corporations and a lot of different stakeholders see that differently. And so here is where you have the biggest outreach, or you have the biggest connection. And that connection is something that we're losing day by day, especially when we're living through in the pandemic. And so given this, all these sources of funding feeding into the basic needs of musicians, entertainers, instrumentalists, artists, especially music educators, that feeds into this vehicle, which is the art and then culture, is the end result that drives the change. So I'm not gonna, I know I've been talking a lot, and so an overarching how might we question that I wanted to run by you. Essentially, I know it's sufficiently broad. It's how might we protect artists and their ability to positively transform society? There's a lot of different barriers that we spoke about, and I would love to get thoughts from the audience, or if they'd rather contact us privately, that's fine too. But this is something that we would like to basically we would love to open this question up to not just the group here, but to people who might not even be working in the music industry or in the entertainment industry, and what art does for society. So I'm gonna stop there, and I would love to know your thoughts.
I have a couple of thoughts on this particular subject. I was looking at, I don't know if Ivy or Olu, if you guys have seen this, but there was this article in the Times, and it talked about the non-essential jobs of since the quarantine, and 71% of the people polled said entertainment was the top non-essential job.
I saw it. I took the time to read the comments.
So yeah, I guess just first of all, changing the changing the idea that music is non-essential. Just going back to take music from your favorite TV shows. Like even if you just watched a show with a laugh track, and there wasn't any transition music in the background or anything like that. But the way music is used is so much ingrained in us as humans that after a while we also take it for granted because it's such a part of our culture. Music is. So I mean, I would, just changing the overall changing the overall idea that music is non-essential, I think is a good starting point. Trying to, essentially another idea is trying to show how essential it is. Where that could be the tricky part, but showing the essential, showing how essential music is, I think is definitely a good starting place.
Yeah, and I think the polling results just showed perspective and what people think about music, and how they're educated about music. And I think it's our job as artists, and as carrier of the brand and the culture and the art to educate people on what music is and what art and culture is. So there's absolutely nothing you can watch on TV that does not have music. If you're watching CNN, it's got music in it. They've got all sorts of sound effects going on in the background. When they transition, when you go to commercials, there's music in it. When you're watching Netflix, there's music, in all the different shows and movies that you watch. So I think it's a perception of having live entertainment outside the confines and comfortability of your home, as compared to really digging into what is music and what is arts and culture, and how do they meet. And I think it's almost impossible unless you just live in some wood somewhere or in an island without internet connection or something, for you not to not listen to music, because it's all over you, it's all around you. Everything you do has got music in it. So we definitely have to change that perspective and that narrative as the carrier of the culture and the brand.
I think it's interesting. It's so interesting that the music, life, breathing, your whole existence is set to a rhythm, like your circadian rhythm, like and 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 so it's ironic that even in our most basic human functions, rhythm, which is the the basis of all things in music, already exists in in you, right? And so sound I think is what we sometimes undervalue, is the ability to piece together or alter, rhythm and sound to create music. But there's nothing in life, like Olu said, I cannot reiterate, even talking. You heard Chris begin this by saying he could sing before he could talk, you know. And that should allude to the importance of the arts when it comes to communication, right? It's an essential communication function. When you when people are trying to uh, carry out important messaging, it's easiest if it's put in the form of song. When you study history, um, there has never been a revolution that was not accompanied by music and song. I don't care where in the world, whether it's South Africa, the apartheid movement, civil rights movement, the women's suffrage movement. If it wasn't a picture, if it wasn't a symbol, if it wasn't like the riveter, like it was something that was artistic, musical, and cultural. So it's and I guess maybe it is so ingrained in us that we don't even realize what is actually taking place. We don't realize that the Barack Obama poster, and I don't remember, gosh, like the artist's name, but some of these things are now forever crystallized and will be the representation of a time period, much like maybe once we make, and even right now, I always, when I'm DJing parties and such, I always joke with people and I'm like, look, don't make the person with the microphone mad, because I have a microphone in my hand and I can talk a lot louder, a whole lot louder than you can, you know? And that's actually what we all are, is amplifiers, you know? Um, we amplify, we're always called on to amplify, to emphasize, to, you know, to be um to be those change agents using, our voices. This goes right now, if you look at the news, if you look at historical events that, over the past 2, 3, 4 years, some of the people who've been at the crux of the most uncomfortable conversations, Colin Kaepernick, LeBron James, you know, athletes, people who have I don't, and yeah, I mean, obviously, very, very, very fanatical following, and are learning that they have to wield that properly, because that was a time where what you say mattered and how you say it matters. And song and music say a lot, a whole lot, an average of 2 minutes to 30 seconds to however, 5 minutes or whatever. So again, it's just simple. I think, that which you have, what is it? You don't know what you don't have until you don't have it anymore, until it's gone. We've always had sound, music, and rhythm, and so we don't even know a life without it, to the point where we don't even deem it essential.
That's exactly 100% true. And I want to quote what you said earlier. that music is all around us and it's so ingrained in us that we don't even notice it. It's very synonymous with that analogy of, I mean, think we're like fish in water. And if you're a fish, you're not going to know even what water is. It's there. And so when we take that for granted and when it's all around us and we're so used to music being around us but not noticing it, people tend to undervalue it. But when it comes to recorded music, I mean, there was a time before when recorded music was so rare and it was very special to hear it, but now it's because we live in this digital culture, it's all around us. And so it's going to take this reimagining and re-emphasizing how important that is in our lives if music just suddenly went away and copyright laws just prevent us from creating and so on and so forth. There's a lot to be discussed here, but there's a common thread between the artists and the fans that's really special, and it's really magical, and it's the ability to be amplifiers for change and change agents among each other. So the artists and the fans are like all together in this to create that culture. And I would love to leave everyone with this thought and think about that connection with the fans and how artists really help feed that mentality with their fans that ultimately feed the system to mobilize ideas within society. And so it's a big driver, and it's something that is constantly overlooked. But I know with many, many more conversations, we'd love to get more feedback. And so we're gonna pause the conversation here. I'm not gonna say we're gonna end the conversation because this is honestly just the start of it's the start of a really important initiative. And so I want to thank you all so much for your time in the morning with us for our very first Fridays with Forbes Ignite. And so, so if all of you, before we sign off, I'd love for you to share your Instagram handles, and you can drop it in the chat. So I know for Chris, yours is CRMC McBride.
Yeah. CR McBride Music.
CR McBride Music on Instagram. Ivy is Poison Ivy, the DJ with a Z, on Instagram, and DJ Olu it's DJ Olu Shogo on Instagram. So please feel free to follow. Feel free to drop them a line if you have any questions. Feel free to send us any messages if you have any lingering thoughts. We'd love to hear it. So thank you all again for joining, and we'll continue the conversation.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.